remember them. The babies. Tommy Pickles, the fearless little leader in a diaper. Chuckie Finster, the anxious redhead with a heart of gold. Phil and Lil, the bug-eating twins with zero chill. And of course, Angelica, spoiled, mean, manipulative. But deep down, just a lonely little girl trying to control a world she didn't fully understand. For millions of kids growing up in the 1990s, Rugrats was more than just a cartoon. It was a warm blanket, a way to see the world through tiny, curious eyes. We laughed, we learned, we grew up with these characters. So, did you realize back then that underneath the colorful crayon drawings and goofy baby talk was something much darker?
Maybe your baby sister really is lost, Dad. Whoa. Oh, maybe we can buy a new one. Where are we gonna find a baby in a place like this?
What if the very things we thought were harmless were actually coded messages, twisted jokes, disturbing subplots, and real-life controversies that most of us completely missed as kids? Why was one episode banned from airing for decades? Why did the creators walk away from their own show? And how did a fun-loving dinosaur end up in an actual lawsuit? So you might think Rugrats was just about imagination and playpens, but this series hit some of the most shocking, inappropriate, and downright unsettling moments in 90s cartoon history. And the true story behind it all? Let's just say, the stuff they didn't put on TV might even be more disturbing than what they did. This isn't just another stroll down memory lane. Today, we're peeling back the diaper, and trust me, what's underneath might scare you forever. So, before you go scrolling for the next nostalgia fix, ask yourself, what did you really remember about Rugrats? And how much of it was just your innocent little brain filtering out the truth? Because by the time we're done here, you will never look at Rugrats the same way again. But hey, first let's rewind the tape, all the way back to 1990. When Rugrats was nothing more than a wild pitch, an experimental idea no one expected to succeed, or cause so much controversy.
Just a minute there, Scout. You don't want any of that. Yucko. What you want is some of the...
Rugrats premiered on August 11th, 1991, the same day as Doug and Ren and Stimpy. It was part of Nickelodeon's bold new era, created by Arlene Klasky, Gabor Suppo, and Paul Germain. Rugrats was meant to capture life from a baby's perspective. The pilot episode, Tommy's First Birthday, was shockingly simple, but that simplicity was its secret weapon. Instead of dialogue-heavy scenes, it focused on sights, sounds, and the raw chaos of growing up, and viewers loved it. Tommy was based on Klasky and Suppo's own son. Chuckie was modeled after Paul Germain's childhood friend. The babies weren't just characters, they were personal. And the show blew up. It became the #1 kids show on cable. Merch flew off the shelves, there were albums, toys, video games, even a feature-length movie. It was a cultural phenomenon. But behind the scenes, all was not well.
Listen up, dummy. This may be your birthday, but when the presents are open, I get first dibs on the toys.
As the show gained popularity, so did the creative tension. Klasky hated how dark the show was getting. Suppo, on the other hand, leaned into the weird. Germain started clashing with both. The team that built Rugrats was starting to fall apart, but that was just the beginning. Wait until you find out what the writers were hiding inside those scripts. You ever notice how often Tommy ends up in his mom's arms? How fixated he is on her attention? Or how Angelica always seems to want her daddy's approval, even when he's clearly distracted? Psychologists have pointed to Rugrats as a bizarre case study in Freudian theory. Infantile desires, subconscious trauma, even Oedipal undertones. Take the episode Angelica's Worst Nightmare. In it, Angelica dreams that her parents have a new baby.
So you're the new baby, huh?
That's right. I'm the new baby. I'm the new baby and you're the old baby, see? And you better get something straight right off the bat. There ain't room in this house for the both of us.
And she's discarded like trash. It's played for laughs, but the imagery is horrifying. In the dream, Angelica literally shrinks while the new baby grows into a giant monster. Or Chuckie's first haircut, where Chuckie has a panic attack about losing part of himself, his hair, because his dad is making the decision for him. It's framed as goofy, but what toddler is that logical? And then there's the infamous The First Cut, where Tommy goes to the doctor and learns about pain, blood, and vulnerability. There's a moment in that episode where Tommy stares at a scalpel and the music drops to near silence.
Look!
It feels like a horror film. According to one of the former writers, these weren't accidents. They were intentional. Rugrats was supposed to reflect the primal anxieties of early childhood, and according to Gabor Suppo, the darker, the better. But the psychological themes weren't even the scariest part. This show had some moments so dark, you'll wonder how they ever made it on the Nickelodeon. Let's keep it going with a season 1 episode that's downright disturbing when you think about it. Ruthless Tommy. The plot? Tommy literally gets kidnapped. Yep. 2 clueless criminals mistake him for a son of a rich tycoon named Ronald Thump, a not-so-subtle parody of Donald Trump, and decide to snatch him for ransom. But their brilliant plan falls apart fast when Tommy, in true chaotic baby fashion, starts wrecking their entire hideout. The wildest moment, he flushes their stolen cash down the toilet. It's hilarious.
I'm telling you, we need a plumber. The cash!
Until you remember this is a cartoon aimed for toddlers. A baby kidnapping played for laughs? It's one of those moments that makes you go, wait, what are we watching? And speaking of stuff that went way over our heads as kids, remember Grandpa Lou's movie night? He rents the usual kid-friendly tape, Reptar Come Home or Reptar Redux. No big deal. But then he casually pulls out a tape called Lonely Space Vixens and says, "That one's for after you go to bed." Sir?
And my personal favorite, Lonely Space Vixens. That's for after you go to bed.
That's a blatant adult film reference in a child's cartoon. The audacity. The writers really slipped that one in for parents watching, but looking back, it's wild that this joke made it past the censors. But wait, it gets even messier behind the scenes. You know Reptar, right? The beloved green dino who's basically the Godzilla of the Rugrats universe? Well, Toho, the studio behind actual Godzilla, thought Reptar looked too familiar. So they sued Nickelodeon, and guess what? That's why Reptar slowly started disappearing from the show. Yep, legal drama is the real reason you barely saw him in later seasons. Reptar went from franchise icon to background character, all thanks to a lawsuit. But none of that compares to the most disturbing thing ever connected to Rugrats.
You know something, Harry? I don't know why I took this job. I can't skate, I don't like kids, and if you want to know the actual fact, lizards give me the creeps.
And no, this didn't even air on TV. I'm talking about something deep in the archives. The twisted, almost forgotten nightmare known as the storyboard jam. There's one moment in Rugrats lore that even the most hardcore fans barely know about it. The infamous storyboard jam. In early 1999, several Rugrats writers and animators participated in what was meant to be a fun internal event. An official contest to storyboard their dream Rugrats scene with no network oversight. It was never intended for public release, but what happened during that jam session left people horrified. One storyboard, allegedly drawn by a disgruntled storyboarder on their last day, depicted the babies breaking the fourth wall. Realizing they were in a show, panicking, and then disintegrating as the panels degraded into disturbing scribbles and surreal horror imagery. Another storyboard, which was passed around like a forbidden artifact, showed Angelica locked in a room, sobbing and screaming for her mother, while the adults calmly watched TV, oblivious.
No, Mommy. The real fun phrase is, she thinks we're all little...
Accounts vary on how far it went, but one Nickelodeon exec reportedly walked in during the event and immediately shut it down, saying, "If this ever gets out, we're all fired." Only a handful of frames were saved, and most were destroyed. But a few blurry photos of the more disturbing panels surfaced years later in obscure animation forums, and fans still debate their authenticity. The most scandalous scene? Tommy, the lovable and adventurous baby, offers Angelica a cocktail made of dog food and Drano. Yep, you heard that right. In this twisted version, Tommy refers to Angelica as his queen and eagerly serves her this horrifying drink. Just as he's about to hand it over, Diddy, his mom, steps in, scolding him, but not for the poison. No, She's just mad that he's drinking juice before dinner. Talk about some misplaced priorities.
Tommy! You know you're not allowed to have juice before dinner.
So after that, things escalate fast. Stu, Tommy's dad, then bursts into the scene, shoving Diddy aside and yelling disturbing, profanity-laced dialogue. He even forces Tommy to drink the toxic concoction himself, which results in a grotesque reaction. Convulsions, malt ball-like excretions, and disturbing facial twitches. The dialogue between the characters gets increasingly confused, turning what once was a beloved family-friendly show into something straight out of a twisted adult parody. The storyboard jam was never animated, and it certainly never aired. It was likely an inside joke among the animation team, but when it leaked online, it left fans shocked. Some believed it was a genuine lost episode, but there's no evidence it was ever meant to be part of the real show.
Well, I guess I could stay a few minutes longer.
So, was it just dark humor among burned out animators, or was it a cry for help, an artistic breakdown from a team pushed too far? Whatever it was, it confirmed what many had suspected. Even the people making Rugrats were haunted by it. What really caused the stir were the real-life breakdowns happening behind the camera. So fast forward a little bit, and by season 3, the pressure was overwhelming. Episodes were being rushed. Storylines had to balance humor, depth, and strict studio guidelines. The creators were exhausted. Paul Germain left the show after repeated clashes with Klasky and Suppo. In an interview years later, he said, "It stopped being fun. Every meeting was a war. I felt like I was losing my own creation." Arlene Klasky reportedly suffered a panic attack during a script review. Animators were pulling 14-hour shifts. One voice actor, who asked not to be named, claimed they fainted in the booth due to stress.
They don't even got diapers. Maybe the pirates stole all their clothes.
Then came the lawsuits. One former storyboard artist alleged that Rugrats had ripped off this indie comic from the 1980s, featuring talking babies who secretly understood adult problems. While the case was eventually dropped, insiders say Nickelodeon paid a quiet settlement to keep things under wraps. Eventually, production slowed, several episodes were pulled from airing, and internal emails leaked years later revealed execs panicking about the show's direction. But even that doesn't compare to what happened during one promo shoot, a disaster that nearly cost a crew member their life. In 1997, Nickelodeon staged a promotional shoot of Rugrats the movie. The studio was hot, overcrowded, and tragically unprepared. During filming, one of the studio lights overheated. A technician collapsed from heat stroke. Another crew member suffered second-degree burns trying to disconnect faulty wiring. The shoot was halted, paramedics rushed in, and Nickelodeon issued a bland statement. All safety protocols were followed. But that wasn't true.
When's this stuff start working anyway? Maybe it takes a while. Wait a minute.
An anonymous tipster leaked internal documents showing that the equipment had failed inspections 2 weeks prior. The production manager quietly reassigned. Whispers started circulating, especially after a child actor who had been visiting the set reportedly witnessed the incident and had to be hospitalized for trauma. The network buried the story, but whispers never really die, especially online, because just a few years later, the fan base would turn dark. Very dark. In the early 2000s, Rugrats fan forums were everywhere, but not all of them were friendly. Disturbing fan art began to spread, like twisted images of Tommy holding knives, Angelica portrayed as a seductress, Chuckie drawn in gory detail, reunited with his dead mom. Absolutely insane.
It used to sleep with me before we even got you. Hey, he's not very nice. Ow.
Some of the most infamous fan theories suggested that the babies were all figments of Angelica's imagination because of her own childhood trauma, and one theory claimed Chuckie died in childbirth. Another claimed that Tommy was stillborn and Stu built toys in his grief. These stories weren't just edgy, they were horrifying, and they spread like wildfire. Nickelodeon tried to ignore them, but the darker the theories got, the more people paid attention. And then, something happened after the show ended that no one can explain. After the series finale in 2004, a strange piece of media surfaced. It was a low-res clip titled Runaway Reptar 4. The footage was glitchy, the animation incomplete, but in it, Tommy is older, silent, and he's wandering through a house that appears to be abandoned. Angelica appears in a window. Her eyes are hollow, and at the end of the clip, Tommy whispers, "I don't want to grow up." The file was traced back to a former intern who worked on Rugrats during its final season. When asked about it, he said, "We were playing with concepts, nothing concrete." But fans, they weren't convinced, especially when a production cell showed up on eBay featuring a scribbled note in the margin, "They lied to us." What did it mean?
I think the last thing was when they put some green stuff all over him and then they rubbed it all around. That made them all shiny.
Some believe the creators planned a final dark episode that was never greenlit. Others think it was just a prank. But the original voice actor for Chuckie once said in an interview, "There's one episode that never aired. I still have nightmares about it." And maybe, just maybe, that's because Rugrats was always more than a cartoon. It was a mirror. So, what does all this mean? Why did this innocent show about babies become a magnet for controversy, lawsuits, psychological horror, and fan obsession? Because Rugrats wasn't just about the babies. It was about fear. It was about loss. About what it truly means to grow up in a world you don't understand. The show took risks no other kids' cartoon dared. It showed children processing death, trauma, abandonment, and did it in pastel colors with goofy sound effects. But maybe that's why we loved it, and maybe that's why it still haunts us. Because deep down, Rugrats told us the truth. Being a kid is terrifying, and growing up is even worse.
See? There they are.
So now you know the full story, the disturbing themes, the backstage battles, the creepy fan theories, the buried accidents. So the next time you see Tommy holding that screwdriver, or Angelica laughing in the background, or Chuckie nervously clutching his bear, you might just feel a chill, because you'll remember, Rugrats wasn't just a cartoon, it was a warning. So what do you think really happened behind the scenes of Rugrats? Did Nickelodeon bury the truth? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this video opened your eyes, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. Alright, thank you. If you made it this far, then you are the real MVP.
What's it like being a dog, Tommy? Are you gonna chase some cats and poop all over the backyard? The mailman's coming soon. Are you gonna bite him?
And if you want to help me keep digging up the wildest, weirdest stories from your favorite throwback shows and movies, consider dropping a super thanks below. It really helps me keep this channel going. And hey, want to be the first to see the new videos before anyone else? Become a channel member and get exclusive early access to fresh content, sneak peeks, and more behind the scenes craziness. Thanks for watching, and remember, not everything from your childhood was as innocent as it seemed. I'll catch you next time.